This is probably the worst show I have watched in a really long time, and I've seen Riverdale. Hello and welcome back to my channel. I don't usually do this sort of review. I don't usually review TV shows or movies unless I have very strong thoughts and feelings about them, and oh my goodness, Outlander is one of those. So fair warning, there will be major spoilers for season 1 of Outlander and also spoilers for the other seasons because I kind of looked up some stuff that happens. So don't watch this if you don't want to be spoiled about Outlander. So I had heard about Outlander a very long time ago, before there was even a TV series. My mom read the books and she really enjoyed them. She would always wait for the new one to come out, and she said, "Oh yeah, they're really good, but you can't read them until you're older." Which, I was old enough to realize, okay, so there's sex in it. Whatever. Many years later, I actually got the first and second books in the series, and the show was out at this point, and I was like, maybe I'll read the first book and see if it's any good. I think at this point the first 2 seasons had been out on Netflix, and that's when I was like, okay, well, now that I have the chance to actually watch the show, maybe I should read the book. And so I started reading the first book, and I think I got maybe 200 pages into it before I stopped reading it. Uh, I there wasn't anything in particular that made me stop reading it, as far as like the voice went or the way she was telling the story. What made me stop reading was I was kind of getting this feeling like, okay, how is the story going to progress? Because there's certain things I do and don't like in like these epic romance stories. And I had the second book, so I opened the second book just to kind of see where they were at. Like, oh, what kind of adventures is it? Claire and Jamie gonna go on, blah, blah, blah. And I see 1968 in the first chapter. I'm like, no, no, what's going on? And so I hop onto Wikipedia to see what is happening. And I find out that, oh yeah, no, she goes back and spends 20 years back in her time with her husband, and all that. I was like, oh, okay, so I'm gonna just not read the rest of this. That's what's gonna happen. Because to me, that's just an instant nope. I want to have the romance between Claire and Jamie. That is what I'm here for. I want to, this epic love story, and it's in 1740s Scotland, and maybe it does take place over several years, but I didn't sign up for, her to, yeah, there's some romance, and then, oh yeah, no, she just has to go back to her time for 20 years. I get that it is because it is for her safety, but I was just done. And so I was like, okay, I'm just not gonna watch the show. It's gonna be the same thing, whatever. And well, now you know that a lot of us are just stuck at home, and Netflix is on a lot for me because, well, I've been binge watching Gilmore Girls for the 100th time, much to my husband's chagrin. And Outlander pops up. It's like, oh, season 3 is now on. And I'm looking at it, and the Scottish guy, Sam Heughan, I think the actor's name is, he's really hot. And because you know how on Netflix the previews autoplay, and I'm like, I know the story is probably not what I want, but whatever. Maybe it'll be fine if I watch it. Keeping in mind, I did not know the actual like content of most of this show. I knew a couple of like plot beats, but I did not know most of what was in here. And I think to some degree you almost have to watch it to just see how awful it is. But yeah, so I was like, okay, fine, I'll watch it. And for the first like third of the season, I was actually entertained. But that was kind of what I had read in the books. I was expecting it. And because it's interesting, she Claire is the main character. for those of you who may not know. She was a combat nurse in World War II. And when the war is over, she and her husband decide to go on a second honeymoon. They had gotten married, I think, not too long before the war started. And since they've been apart for 5 years, he's been in intelligence in London and she's been on the front line as a combat nurse. And they're trying to figure out who they are now that it's been 5 years later and they've gone through a war. And so they decide to go on a second honeymoon to Inverness in Scotland. And her husband's also, he's a history professor. He just got a job offer from Oxford. And so he wants to, he loves all this historical stuff. And he has an ancestor who was around in that area back in the 1740s. He was actually he was a British soldier. He was a British captain. And he's trying to research him and see what's going on. And Claire's just kind of along for the ride, and she has really been into botany and how to use the different plants and things for medicinal purposes. She's gotten really into it. And so they go at one point to visit this circle of stones. It's kind of like Stonehenge, but much, much smaller. And they witness sort of a local ritual thing going on. It's just kind of a silly, it seems to them to be a silly thing that the local women do. And they go up and they look, and Claire finds this flower that looks kind of interesting. Well, they don't have a chance, she doesn't have a chance to look at it and grab it. So she decides to go back later by herself because her husband wants to spend his time at the local, it's like the church or with the local reverend. Because that's where all the historical stuff is. And she's like, oh yeah, and she's bored to tears by it. So she's like, it's fine, go ahead, do that. I'm gonna go get this flower to see it because it looks kind of interesting. So she goes and she hears something and she touches one of the stones and boom, she's in 1740s Scotland. It takes her a little while to figure this out, but she figures out pretty quickly that something's wrong. She gets assaulted by her husband's ancestor, who is called Jack Randall, known as Black Jack Randall, because he's a dick. And she gets saved by local Scotsmen, but they, don't trust her either because she's English. And so a whole bunch of crap happens. And then they discover that she knows about medicine, and so they utilize that, and then a bunch of other stuff happens, which I'm going to talk about because, oh my god, I haven't actively hated a show in a very long time. I mentioned Riverdale in the opening, but a big difference is I was fully aware that Riverdale was completely garbage. It could never be good, not the way they were trying to do it. And so but I watched a full season and a half of that show before I went, nope, I just can't with this. I know it's bad, but it was like a popcorn show. And I thought maybe this, like, okay, maybe I don't like the whole fact that, oh, well, they're gonna get separated for, her and Jamie are gonna get separated for 20 years. But I was like, maybe if that's the worst of it, I can deal with it. But that is the least of this show's problems. So I'm gonna have to detail, kind of in a couple different sections, what my main gripes, because there are many. If you like Outlander, I'm so sorry. You can still like Outlander if you like. This is not my type of show, and I feel like there's quite a few things that turn me off as a viewer, and as it would turn me off as a reader, because apparently the book is just as bad, if not worse, than the show. So I'm going to discuss some of this stuff. Yeah. So I guess first let's kind of go into sort of the overall story structure, the plot, that sort of thing. There's definitely plot elements and characters and stuff that I want to talk about too, but I'll talk about those in different sections. So kind of the main, one of the main issues I have and is that this show feels like a soap opera or a telenovela. And what I mean by that, so it's really typical in a soap opera, telenovela, that the characters will have a short victory and then it immediately is taken away from them, or something worse happens. And this happens like every single episode or repeat. It happens very, very often. They don't have enough time to breathe and just enjoy the fact that they have achieved a victory of some sort. I actually had to stop watching Jane the Virgin because of this. That show was really funny and entertaining, but I hated the constant up, down, up, down, up. Like my emotions couldn't handle it. I was just like, I know the show ends well, but I can't deal with that because it just drives me crazy. And Outlander felt a lot like that. The victories that these characters had were few and far between, and when they did happen, they were immediately or almost immediately undercut by a bigger danger or drama or some other thing. And it was really it's really tiresome to have to go through that all the time. Most shows, you do have to deal with, okay, there's something else you have to deal with. There's another thing going on. But typically when there's victories, they get to savor those. Or, okay, well, we still have this thing to deal with, but now we have time to plan to do this. And instead of this thing going horribly wrong, we can actually, do this right. This show is very reactionary with its drama. The drama happens, and they very rarely get to actually plan something out and it go the way they want. Usually they plan something and it goes horribly wrong, and then they have to figure out how to fix it. And this happens all the time, and it drives me crazy because you usually want to see, you can have that happen once or twice in like, a season or something, but you want your characters to learn from it and to figure this out, or, just be smarter, maybe, or get those victories. And that doesn't happen. Not really. The show also really likes to, it likes to toy with the viewer in that it also, beyond having like short victories and like then constant, undercutting, they also, in the space of, 20 minutes, will try to, seem like something is going to go right and it doesn't, and they'll repeat that pattern several times in the same short scene. Like someone's trying to escape and they do something and they're about to escape, and then they can't, and they try to escape and it looks like they're going to and they can't. And that happens several times in the same scene, and it's very frustrating. It's like, can you not? We don't need this constant torture. It feels unnecessary. And I really, really don't like that. And I will get more into the specifics of that in other sections. Those will be more spoilery. This is kind of very general, but I don't like the way the story is structured, and that is a big problem. Beyond the content, the structure of the story is a mess, and I really, really don't like it. All right, so I want to talk about the characters, particularly Claire and Jamie. Jamie I actually like for the most part. He can be, in universe and everything, I think that he could definitely come across as annoying or brash or whatever, but it makes sense. He's young. He's like 21, 22, and he has been on the run for about 4 years at this point from his home. He hasn't been able to go back to his home. And he's very young, very hard-headed, strong-willed, that sort of thing. And it's interesting what he goes through and his backstory and how he's reacting to things, because he has a lot of agency and he does what you would expect him to do, and he's not really sometimes it's annoying, but mostly it makes sense, and it's like, oh, it's entertaining, it's fine. I don't have too much of an issue with Jamie. It doesn't hurt that it's Sam Heughan, but that's really not the point. The point is his character is fine. My main problem is with the character of Claire. I feel like she is annoying, and she also, I don't think, is utilized as well as she could be. And those are two big problems. So she constantly throughout the season, she gets really angry when stuff doesn't go her way, or when something is happening that is not what she's used to. She gets really angry, really petulant. She's almost acting like a child. And very rarely, if at all, did we ever see her try to think and adapt to what is going on in this time period. This is 200 years in the past, so things are going to be different. Things are going to happen differently. But she just gets angry and is like, no, this is stupid. She's never understanding about it. She never tries to think before she speaks. She just is constantly like angry. She reacts very angrily to everything, and blaming everybody else except for herself. She does some stuff that's really stupid, and usually she just doesn't blame herself. She blames other things. And she's acting like a little child through most of it, and that really irks me as far as the character goes. Like, because certain situations she could have handled way differently. Mostly she should have kept her mouth shut, and that would have made things much easier. And there was no reason for her to speak out. A lot of the time when she does speak out, it doesn't make the situation better. Like, they're not going to listen to you. And she doesn't seem to get the fact that most people are not going to listen to her. She just keeps doing it, and she gets mad and upset, and I don't I don't know why she has like very little character growth in this entire season, like at all. Another thing, she goes through a lot of trauma, and it does not seem to affect her at all. Other characters go through trauma and it affects them. Does not affect her. She's affected briefly, like right after something happens, and then she's fine. And so there's no character growth, and that really bothers me. The other thing with not being utilized properly, and this is almost worse than her being a petulant child, although that is very annoying. I don't like it. She is a combat nurse. She knows medicine and botany and all this. There's not a lot of that medical knowledge being put to use in this series, or at least this season. And you do have a few, there are a couple points where, her advanced medical knowledge does come into play, but not that often. It's mostly prevalent in the first third of the season, and then it just takes a complete back seat, and very little happens with that, as far as her like trying to use that advanced medical knowledge, except for the time when she gets accused of being a witch. And I hope, maybe this is addressed in future seasons, so this could potentially be something that they address later. But usually when you have a time travel type story and somebody has a specific field of knowledge that they know and was definitely going to be more advanced than the time period they're going to, you usually like to see it utilized a decent amount and actually be utilized in a lot of the different plots that are going on. It's not utilized super often in that way. It's just kind of a thing that she's doing. The only time that it really seems to have a huge significance is she does this stuff and then is accused of being a witch for a lot of it. But beyond that, it doesn't really have a huge role, and that's annoying because I love seeing characters use their knowledge and be able to figure out problems in a different way, be able to solve these things. Like, that's one of the really interesting parts of time travel movies and shows and books. Like, use this knowledge. I want to see this. Come on. It's not done very well, and that really makes me mad. It's almost to the point where I feel like this would be a better show without Claire in it. She exists to explain stuff to. She is the straight man. She's the person that everything has to be explained to, because the audience needs somebody to have somebody, the audience needs to know what's going on, so they explain to this person, and then you know what's going on. And I just realized, I totally forgot. The most egregious part, I do not believe that Claire is in love with Jamie. I know she's supposed to be, but it is not conveyed well at all. So she, at one point has a chance to go back home. She tried before and she got captured because, why not? But she has a chance to go home, and at this point, she has been assaulted many times. Other things have happened to her, which I will discuss in another section. And she has been accused of being a witch and was almost burned at the stake. Literally, like a day later, she has a chance to go home through the stones. And she decides not to because apparently she wants to stay with Jamie. And this makes absolutely no sense. She has been even though she has a lot of good sexual chemistry with Jamie, she's never showed that she's in love with him or that she's falling in love with him. She's just kind of, very pleasant. It doesn't seem like, oh, she's in love with him. You can see Jamie falling in love with her, but you don't see Claire falling in love with him. They don't really show that, and she doesn't express it. She doesn't really have this moment where she realizes that she's in love with him. They just say, oh yeah, so she decided to stay. And I'm thinking, no. Yeah, we have really good sex. But I just almost got burned at the stake, and I have been almost killed several times and had other things happen to me, and so I'm a go. Sorry, bye. I was rooting for her to go to the stones and leave. I was like, don't stay. No, why'd you stay? I think that was the moment I decided that I actually hated the show, because I had not been invested in her side of the relationship. And I know that sounds like, oh, I hate Claire, oh, Jamie, I love you. You deserve somebody better. No, it's not that. It's just that she is not developed enough. Claire, she's basically, her almost permanent setting is petulant child. And they haven't shown her falling in love or anything. And she suddenly just decides to stay for this guy. And that's like the only reason, because otherwise, like, bad stuff is gonna keep happening to you. When you got out of these situations, it was only just barely, and these things have not been resolved. It's not like, oh, we got, this situation resolved itself, like this won't be a problem in the future. It's gonna be a problem in the future. It's not like it just stopped because she got out of it. So she's just stupid, I think. And I think that's what also gets me, is that she's petulant and she's really stupid. She doesn't think. I think maybe that's her overall issue, is that it doesn't seem like she ever thinks before she acts. She just does, and it never works out for her. Like, I don't think ever in at least the first season. So she drove me crazy, and it's really hard to watch a show and enjoy it if you hate the main character. All right, so now I gotta talk about the big elephant in the room of this show. And I'm going to put a content warning for sexual assault. And you can skip to this time so you don't have to listen to this section if that is, something that you can't deal with. But it is a huge, huge part of this show. And another reason that I don't really like this show. I am fortunate. I've never been a victim of sexual assault, but regardless, it's still, the way it's utilized in the show really, really turned me off. It's understandable that this stuff would happen back in the day, and it's reasonable to show one or two instances of this. Where the show really pisses me off is that it utilizes this all the time, and gratuitously and almost unnecessarily. It seems like the author, and of course the showrunners and all that, because I think this is an issue from the book and that the show is just showing this, but the author seems to think that the only way to really traumatize a character is to have them be sexually assaulted. Once in a while they get injured, but mostly it's assault. Claire she's sexually assaulted, at least 4 or 5 times throughout this season, and she's actually raped once. And then other women are assaulted. Jamie is actually raped, and they show everything that happens to him for a very long time in the last episode of the show. And that's part of the reason it took me so long to get through the last episode. I think it took me like 3 or 4 days to actually get through like one episode, because like it wasn't that I couldn't handle watching it, but it was just that I was like, oh no, this doesn't feel right to me at all. And it's used as a characterization tool, a tool to, traumatize certain characters. And it feels like the author has a bit of a fetish for this sort of thing, in that how often it is used. Now, if you're going for pure realism, sure, I am sure that this happened a lot. But even in most historical type stuff, or like the dark fantasy stories or things like that, they don't show this all the time, because you get it. A really great example is Game of Thrones. The first season, there I think are 2 instances of rape that I remember. The first with Daenerys on Drogo, when Daenerys and Drogo are married, and then the second when the Dothraki are attacking a place and are like capturing slaves. But it's purely with the Dothraki culture, and that it's shown to be that is part of their culture. They don't see other peoples and stuff as people. They're property, and you can do whatever you want with property, and it's shown to be like a very consistent thing. I'm not gonna get into the whole with the prostitution and stuff in that show, because that could technically be considered non-consensual, and I don't know. I'm not gonna get into that part, but it's not shown all the time in that show, even when there are a couple instances in later seasons, and it's a big deal, because they try to show most of the instances being consensual. And I think the whole point is, it's not that they're trying to say that this doesn't happen in this universe, because it absolutely does, but they're like, yeah, but you get it. Like, we don't need to show it all the damn time. Especially with the same characters that's happening over and over and over again. And in this season, Claire is assaulted so many times, mostly by the same character. But it's like, all right, we get it. We get that this is a thing. We get that it is bad, but it should not be the only reason that the characters have trauma. Or actually, even, I think I mentioned this earlier, Claire doesn't seem to have a whole lot of trauma from this. She has a little bit right after she's actually raped. That episode, she has some issues. But then she's over it. She does not seem to have any issues really going forward with all this stuff happening. Like, if that kept happening to me, you bet your ass I'd be gone. Like, I'm going back to the future. I don't care. Jamie, you're awesome. And oh my goodness, but no, I'm sorry. Also, I almost got burned for being a witch, so that's not happening. And then the last episode, Jamie is very traumatized from what happened to him, because he basically let Blackjack Randall rape him in order for Claire to be released safely. He said, he wouldn't fight it, and he was just absolutely traumatized. Like, this, he just wants to die, and it's a horrible thing. And they went into great detail showing what happens to him. And I think that it's important to show that, men can experience this as well as women. But they didn't have to go quite as in-depth as they did. And then the way it's handled to get him to get over what happened, Claire essentially assaults him and tells him to get over it, because otherwise she'll die too. And again, I have not experienced this myself. I am not an expert in this field, but something about that whole part felt really gross and wrong to me. And if you feel the same way, let me know. Or if there's or if maybe for some reason this was okay, let me know. I don't know, but to me, that felt really wrong. And I was cringing the whole time going, oh, this doesn't seem right. Like, no. And supposedly people say from the books he's like gets over it, like after that he's just over it. Hopefully in the second season of the show, maybe they show that he's not over it, because I wouldn't be over it. What happened to him was terrible. So yeah, it is a huge part of the show, and I don't think that it needed to be quite as big as it was. I feel like it was used to the point of being gratuitous and unnecessary to some degree. I think that you can have some of that in your show because it is something that happens. And of course it is a good way to give your characters some trauma, but because Claire does not appear traumatized, what was the point? Yeah, I mean, maybe it's like, oh, well, we're going to show that this character is bad because, you know, of this, and that's the only reason they're bad. They do that a lot in this show too, where Claire is targeted by a lot of guys, and you know, because they just like, oh, one guy in particular always keeps trying to get in their pants, and that's like how they're basically characterizing him as being a dick. Like, you know, you can show him being a dick in other ways. You can show people being bad in other ways. But it seems to be the main characteristic, and I feel like you can do it in better ways than that. But yeah, so this is definitely a kind of the sensitive part of this show, and I don't really know what people feel about it, but I feel like it didn't need to be as prevalent as it was. Definitely turned me off a lot. Oh, and it doesn't go away. That's the other thing that I'm like, oh, the author seems to have a thing for this. I don't know why. But yeah, so spoilers for later seasons. Claire and Jamie have a daughter, and she grows up and she's like 20. She gets raped too. And then Claire gets raped late in a later season again. And I'm like, why? Why do you have to keep having this happen? I don't know. I don't know why they have to have this happen in the show or the books in general. Like, I don't know why this has to be a thing. I think that, I don't know if it's like something they're trying, is like, oh, we're trying to bring awareness to this. It doesn't seem, I don't know that that's really a thing, because it's showing in the past. And it's, you know, it's like showing, it's like, oh yeah, this stuff happened all the time. It's like, we get that. You showed this before, we get that. But, you know, you can have other trauma happen to characters, like, you know, they could be gravely injured, or, you know, I like the whole almost burned at the stake witchcraft thing, mostly because it's like, that seems like a realistic problem that they would have to deal with, and that's something that could be very traumatic. Again, Claire doesn't act like it's traumatic after the fact, because why the hell would she? Because she sucks as a character. But that could be a good source of trauma. Like, oh my God, I've been helping these people, and what is my reward? I almost get killed. So that could have been a great thing, but no. The show just drives me absolutely bonkers. Ugh. All right, so I think overall, my biggest gripe, and I have a lot, but it's just that it does not work for me as a time travel epic romance. Because typically, and this isn't always the case, but usually with these epic romances, whether time travel or fantasy or historical or whatever, usually you have the main couple, and it takes a little while for them to fall in love and to get together. But then, you know, they're together, but then something pulls them apart, and it's usually not for 20 years, because, oh my God, that's like forever. But something usually pulls them apart, and then they, you know, they're working to get back to each other or whatever, and things happen, and they have to deal with that, and they eventually get back together, get pulled apart. That sort of thing happens a lot. They get together and get pulled apart. But then you have to have this really interesting thing going on around them. And that's usually what happens. And this show seems to be like, oh yeah, we know we're supposed to do that, but we're going to focus a lot more on all of the, like, sex stuff. It's like, let's just have Claire and Jamie just bone like all the time. And oh yeah, we'll have some political intrigue in there, but mostly we're gonna focus on all of the assault and like non-political interesting stuff that actually moves the plot forward. We're gonna focus on all the other crap that is stupid. So yeah, I have major issues with this show. I do not want to watch the other seasons, although if you want me to and want to hear me rant about it some more, I certainly can. I have Netflix, so I have the first 3 seasons on there. I will say the show was it was easy for me to keep watching it because, again, like a soap opera and telenovela, you might not like what's happening, but you're like, ooh, but I need to see more. That's why I watched so many damn episodes of Riverdale. That show was stupid, but I was like, I'm kind of interested in seeing what's happening. And then the same thing happened over and over, and I'm like, okay, I'm done. So there were some elements of the show that were good. Like I said, I think that Jamie's character was pretty well done. I think that as gratuitous as it was, the trauma that he went through, they showed him reacting to it more realistically because he went through some crap. And him being, young, brash man and everything. I think that was really interesting. They had some, other interesting characters. And I liked, it was a really beautiful show. Like, it was really pretty, just all the scenery that they had. And I like the music. Bear McCreary did the music. He did the Battlestar Galactica music, so, it's great. I wasn't a huge fan of the opening theme of Outlander. It wasn't that it was a bad theme, I just didn't really care for it, but the music was really, really good. But I feel like this show is not going to scratch your Game of Thrones itch. Not really, because it's not dealing with all the political stuff nearly as much. It's mostly all about the sex, and kind of the romance. But it doesn't work as a romance either, because you do not feel like Claire loves Jamie until basically she says, oh, I can't live without you. And you're like, when did that happen? I do not feel that you love him. I feel that you're attracted to him, because who wouldn't be? But like, I don't feel that, and it really bothers me. So this show fails on a lot of fundamental levels for me. Now, if if you want a good version of a good time travel epic romance, I know this is definitely like maybe not the same demographic for people who would want to watch Outlander, but this is a graphic novel. This is called Red River by Chie Shinohara. I'll put it down in the description, because obviously it's reversed, because that's how my phone films, and my editing software doesn't have a thing to flip it. But yeah, Red River by Chie Shinohara. It is 28 volumes long. It's complete. It's from the 90s, but this is the whole time travel, political intrigue, epic romance thing done really well. It still has lots of sex and violence in it, but it's not gratuitous. It's just there, but there's plenty of it in here, and so it's gonna scratch that itch for you. This, I feel like, scratches more of a Game of Thrones itch than Outlander does. This is actually, since it's a little older, it is a little difficult to find in paperback. However, they do sell the ebooks of these still, and you may be able to find it somewhere online. But this series is amazing. It actually, utilizes her from being from the future, but she's also 15, so she doesn't have as much knowledge, but she knows things like, well, we have to make sure people have clean water and do all this stuff. And she's like, oh, I recognize iron in a time when this is back in the Hittite Empire, 2000 BC, something like that. And they're all using bronze. And so she recognizes certain things that make more sense. The romance is a slower buildup. It takes her, I think, 2 years before she realizes that she wants to stay there. Not, a few months like it does in Outlander. I think in Outlander, she has only been in the 1740s for like 2 months, 3 months before she decides that she's just gonna stay there forever. So many problems with that show. But yeah, I recommend this as a really great series to scratch that itch that Outlander does not. I do not enjoy it. Now, if you as my viewers have any recommendations for good, either like time travel type things or epic romances or anything like that, go ahead and leave them down in the description. I'm always up for checking stuff like that out. I think that I think that Outlander does have an audience. Again, it's very soap opera-y, telenovela-y, and I think that a lot of people like that, and I'm just not one of them. This is obviously not made for me. And but yeah, I was watching it and I hated it and I needed to talk about it. So yeah, thank you for watching. If you want to see me talk more about TV shows or movies or anything like that, let me know. If you want me to watch more of Outlander, let me know. It's not super hard because, you know, again, there are some qualities. I don't know that they're redeeming qualities, but at least it's like, okay, it's not like hard to watch necessarily, mostly. But I can do that if you want me to review the other seasons. Oh, not really looking forward to that, but I can certainly do that. But anyway, thank you for watching, and hopefully this was entertaining for you. I just really had to talk about this because it really pissed me off. So yeah. So I will see you guys later, and thanks for watching. Bye.